The first thing to fail was his leg. The carbon fibre prosthetic, its socket worn and chafed by weeks of neglect in a county jail that treated medical needs as bureaucratic inconveniences, gave a sickening twist. The second was his heart, a tired muscle strained by 70 years of life. A war of love and loss began to hammer, a frantic, desperate rhythm against his ribs. The third was his breath, a shallow, ragged gasp that caught in his throat and offered no relief. As Isaiah Fields, a decorated black veteran of the Vietnam War, collapsed to the cold marble floor of the courtroom, the world fractured into a kaleidoscope of chaos. His grandson Leo cried out from the front row, a sound of pure boyish anguish. His lawyer, a fierce young woman named Anya Sharma, shouted his name, her voice a sharp crack in the oppressive silence. A woman in the gallery gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. But above it all, one sound persisted, the sharp, rhythmic crack, crack, crack of Judge Wallace Thorne's gavel, an instrument of indifferent authority, demanding order in the face of a man's absolute breaking. Cameras flashed their light, glinting off the oxygen tank being rushed forward. The image was instantly iconic, a brutal tableau of American contradiction, a fallen hero, the flag he bled for standing just behind the bench, and a system that had just demanded he stand on a leg that was no longer there. Before we unpack the lifetime of prejudice and the nexus of power that led to this horrifying moment, take a second to let us know where you're watching from in the comments below. If you believe human dignity should be the bedrock of justice, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. The moment Isaiah Fields hit that floor, a seismic shift began, and you will want to see exactly how his fall forced a nation to finally stand for something better. For 30 years, Isaiah Fields had served a country that was often ambivalent about serving him back. 3 tours in Vietnam had left their indelible mark, etching horrors into his memory that would visit him in the quiet hours of the night for the rest of his life. His service record was a testament to his courage, gleaming with commendations, including a Bronze Star for valor and the Purple Heart. That last medal, a small grim piece of purple and bronze, had cost him his right leg. He rarely spoke of that day, but he relived it often. The thick, suffocating jungle air, the sudden, deafening roar of an ambush, the sight of his squad young men, barely out of their teens, pinned down and paralyzed by a hail of enemy fire. Without a conscious thought, he had charged forward his own body, becoming a magnet for the bullets drawing the fire away from his men. He remembered the searing, white-hot pain as shrapnel tore through his thigh, the frantic work of the medics, and the quiet, final decision in a field hospital. The leg was gone, but 6 of his brothers were alive. It was a trade he never questioned. His return to civilian life was a quieter, more insidious kind of combat. The rejections were never overt. "You're overqualified. We've decided to go in a different direction." But Isaiah, a man fluent in the subtleties of human behavior, saw the truth in their averted eyes. They saw a black man. They saw a disabled man. They saw a problem, not a solution. The PTSD was a constant shadow, ambushing him during thunderstorms, turning a grocery store aisle into a hostile corridor. After years of struggle, he found a new kind of purpose at the Oakwood Community Center, mentoring at-risk youth in his predominantly black neighborhood. He became a beacon for kids drowning in the violence and apathy of the streets. He didn't preach, he listened. He shared stories not of glory, but of resilience, teaching them that the scars you carry are proof that you survived. His personal life was a testament to that survival. 15 years ago, he'd lost his wife, the love of his life, to cancer. Then, in a cruel twist of fate, his only daughter Jasmine was killed in a car accident, leaving Isaiah as the sole guardian of his grandson, Leo. At 14, Leo was a bright, earnest boy who saw his grandfather not as a relic of a forgotten war, but as a hero. Their small, meticulously kept home was a sanctuary of mutual support. Isaiah imparted wisdom earned through hardship. Leo explained the mysteries of the internet and why teenagers thought TikTok dances were a viable form of communication. The event that dragged Isaiah into the maw of the justice system began as a cry for justice itself. A peaceful protest had formed in the heart of the city after police shot an unarmed black teenager. Isaiah, whose leg ached fiercely after more than an hour of standing, had planned to stay home. But Leo, his face set with a determined gravity that mirrored Isaiah's own, had insisted. "If people like us don't show up, Grandpa, who will?" Isaiah went to watch over his grandson. He stood at the edge of the crowd, his hand resting on his cane, observing the peaceful gathering. But the peace was shattered when police in full riot gear arrived, their presence an immediate and aggressive escalation. Isaiah watched in horror as an officer roughly manhandled a young protester who couldn't have been much older than Leo. Instinct forged in the crucible of combat took over. He moved forward, not aggressively, but deliberately, placing himself between the officer and the boy. "Take it easy, son," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Let's all just take a breath." What happened next would be endlessly debated, but the truth was simple. In the chaotic surge of the crowd, Isaiah was shoved from behind. He lost his balance, his cane slipping on the pavement. As he reached out to steady himself, his hand brushed the officer's arm. That was all it took. The official report claimed he had assaulted an officer with a deadly weapon, his cane. Eyewitness accounts, including that of a local pastor, described an elderly man losing his balance. But the most crucial piece of evidence, the officer's own body cam footage, was declared to be irretrievably corrupted during the upload process. District Attorney Grant Caldwell, a slick, ambitious white man whose campaign for state office was built on a tough-on-crime platform, saw political gold. He pursued the maximum charges against Isaiah, using press conferences to paint the decorated veteran as a violent agitator. Behind closed doors, Caldwell's staff heard him refer to the case as a golden opportunity to send a message to these protesters. Isaiah's court-appointed attorney was Anya Sharma, a young, fiercely intelligent Asian-American public defender, buried under an avalanche of cases, but possessed of a profound sense of right and wrong. From their first meeting, she knew Isaiah was innocent, and she dedicated herself to his defense with a tenacity that belied her years. The first pretrial hearing was a chilling preview of what was to come. Judge Wallace Thorne, the man who would preside over Isaiah's fate, was a figure carved from the stone of the Old South. He too was a Vietnam veteran, a fact he mentioned often, though he conveniently omitted that his service had been in a rear-echelon administrative role 50 miles from the nearest sound of gunfire. Court records showed he'd been reprimanded twice for racially insensitive remarks from the bench, but the sanctions were meaningless, a few hours of mandatory sensitivity training. As the hearing began, Anya's blood ran cold. Judge Thorne addressed the prosecution with deference and respect, But he interrupted Anya's statements with impatient sighs and dismissive waves of his hand. When he reviewed Isaiah's file, he looked up, a sneer of undisguised contempt on his face. "I see a lot of troublemakers these days hiding behind their military service," he remarked to the courtroom at large. The words, a casual desecration of a lifetime of sacrifice, struck Isaiah with the force of a physical blow. He looked into the judge's cold, unforgiving eyes and understood. His medals, his scars, his service, they held no currency here. The system he had fought to protect had no intention of protecting him. The trial began with a jury selection that was a masterclass in systemic bias. D.A. Caldwell's team used their peremptory challenges to strike every single black citizen from the jury pool. Anya objected each time, pointing out the blatant racial pattern, and each time, Judge Thorne overruled her. The court finds the prosecution's reasoning to be race-neutral. He would state, mechanically, his face a mask of bored indifference. The final jury was composed of 10 white members, 1 Asian man and 1 Hispanic woman. In a county where a third of the population was black, they had created a jury of Isaiah's peers that looked nothing like him. Isaiah's physical condition began to spiral downwards in the county jail. The facility was not equipped to handle his disability. His prosthetic caused painful pressure sores that went untreated. His prescribed pain medication was administered erratically or sometimes not at all. When Anya filed a motion for medical accommodation, Judge Thorne denied it, callously suggesting that a bit of discomfort might encourage a more realistic perspective on the generous plea offer the state has made. The trial itself was a theatre of the absurd. The arresting officers delivered testimony that was so perfectly aligned, it was clear it had been rehearsed. During her cross-examination, Anya expertly exposed contradictions in their stories. One officer claimed Isaiah had swung his cane like a baseball bat, a physical impossibility for a man who needed it for balance. The other claimed Isaiah had charged forward a feat, contradicted by photos showing him stationary. Yet whenever Anya zeroed in on these inconsistencies, Judge Thorne would sustain the prosecution's objections, effectively shielding the officers from accountability. The one beacon of hope was a retired white Marine named Frank Miller, who had served in Isaiah's unit. After seeing his old comrade's mugshot on the news, he drove 3 hours to the courthouse. "That man," he told a local reporter, his voice thick with rage, "saved my life. He saved our entire unit. I wouldn't have a family. I wouldn't be here today if not for him. What they are doing to him is a desecration." Frank started attending the trial every day, sitting ramrod straight in the front row, his Marine Corps cap a silent symbol of solidarity. Soon other veterans joined him. The gallery began to fill with men and women of all ages and races. Their service medals and unit caps a quiet but powerful rebuke to the proceedings. Judge Thorne grew visibly irritated by their presence at one point, attempting to have them removed for inappropriate attire. The prosecution's case relied heavily on a paid informant, a man with prior convictions for perjury who claimed to have witnessed the assault. Anya's cross-examination was a surgical dissection of his lies, culminating in her producing financial records showing a payment to the witness from a shell corporation linked to the police union. The revelation sent a shockwave through the courtroom, but Judge Thorne quickly instructed the jury to disregard it, a futile attempt to unring a bell that had been rung with a sledgehammer. The most crucial breakthrough came from an anonymous source. Anya received a thumb drive in the mail containing the corrupted body cam footage. It was exactly as the eyewitnesses had described. It showed Isaiah attempting to de-escalate the situation, being shoved and falling. Most damningly, it captured one officer telling the other, "Make sure the story sticks," as they handcuffed the elderly disabled veteran on the ground. Anya and her co-counsel, a veteran civil rights lawyer named Benjamin Williams, who had joined the case, knew the footage was a silver bullet. But they also knew Judge Thorne would fight tooth and nail to keep it from the jury. They filed an emergency motion to admit the new evidence. Thorne, as expected, denied it, citing a litany of procedural excuses. The defense immediately filed an emergency appeal. While the legal battle raged, Isaiah was fading. He had lost 20 pounds. The stress had triggered a cardiac arrhythmia, sending him to the infirmary twice. Back in his cell, the claustrophobia induced vivid flashbacks to Vietnam. The concrete walls closing in like the jungle, the shouts of other inmates echoing like gunfire. He was fighting a war on two fronts, one for his freedom and one for his sanity. The state appellate court, in a stunning and swift decision, overruled Judge Thorne, ordering him to admit the body cam footage immediately. Their sharply worded opinion noted that the pursuit of justice cannot be subverted by procedural gamesmanship, especially when exculpatory evidence has been deliberately suppressed. Humiliated and enraged, Judge Thorne's last vestiges of judicial temperament vanished. He became openly hostile, his courtroom a fiefdom of petty tyranny. This set the stage for the final catastrophic confrontation. Isaiah returned to court against his doctor's advice. He was visibly weaker, his skin ashen, but his dignity was intact. He sat in a wheelchair, a portable oxygen tank hissing softly beside him. Despite his condition, Judge Thorne denied all requests for special accommodation. It was during Anya's final redirect that Thorne made his fatal move. He interrupted her to admonish Isaiah for his disrespectful posture. "Mr. Fields," the judge snapped, "I will not tolerate slouching in my court. Sit up straight." "Your Honor," Anya interjected aghast. "He is in a wheelchair. He is ill." "I do not care. This court demands respect." Thorne's eyes glittered with a cold, cruel light. Then came the order that would stop the nation in its tracks. "The defendant will rise when addressing the court." The room fell into a stunned, horrified silence. "Your Honor, that is impossible." Benjamin Williams said, his voice a low, dangerous rumble. "You have the medical records. This demand is not just a violation of the law, it is an act of barbarism." "I will have order," Thorne roared, banging his gavel. "He will stand now, or I will add another charge of contempt." Isaiah looked at Anya, then at Leo, whose face was a mask of terror. With a quiet, weary sigh, he began to push himself up. Using the defense table for leverage, his arms trembling, his face contorted in a grimace of pure agony, he struggled to obey. He made it to a wavering semi-upright position, leaning heavily on the table. "Fully upright, Mr. Fields." Thorne sneered. Isaiah tried. He pushed with everything he had left. The courtroom watched a collective witness to this calculated act of cruelty. And then it happened. His prosthetic leg, the one that had carried him through 30 years of civilian life, buckled. A socket ill-fitted and damaged failed completely. A low groan tore from Isaiah's throat as he pitched forward, collapsing to the floor in a heap of exhausted, broken humanity. The courtroom exploded. Paramedics rushed forward, and in that moment of chaos, As his grandson sobbed and his lawyers shielded his body, the gallery stood up. Frank Miller was the first, his back ramrod straight, then the other veterans, then the civilians. Men, women, black, white, young, old, they rose as one, a silent, powerful forest of defiance. They stood for the man who could not. Frank Miller turned to face the bench, his voice ringing with the moral authority the judge had just abdicated. I watched this man lose his leg, saving my life. I have now watched you try to take the last of his dignity. You failed. We stand with him. We are his stand. The aftermath was a tidal wave of reckoning. The footage of Isaiah's collapse, captured by a news camera in the courtroom, went viral, sparking national outrage. The state Supreme Court immediately suspended Judge Thorne, who was later impeached and removed from the bench. D.A. Caldwell's political career was destroyed. Facing disbarment for prosecutorial misconduct, he dropped all charges against Isaiah. Months later, a frail but resolute Isaiah Fields, flanked by Leo and Frank Miller, stood in the Rose Garden as the president signed the Isaiah's Law, a sweeping piece of legislation mandating strict ADA compliance and accountability for judicial misconduct in all federal and state courts. Isaiah never sought the spotlight, but his quiet refusal to surrender his dignity had ignited a movement. His fall had forced a nation to its feet, reminding it that true justice isn't about the power of a gavel, but about the collective courage to stand for those who have been knocked down and to never ever let them lie there alone. The story of Isaiah Fields is a powerful reminder that the fight for justice is often waged not in grand speeches, but in small acts of unwavering dignity. It shows how one person's courage can expose the deepest flaws in our systems and inspire a community to demand change. If this story of resilience against overwhelming odds moved you, please honor Isaiah's stand by hitting the like button and subscribing to our channel. Share this video with someone who needs to see what real courage looks like. In the comments below, tell us what part of Isaiah's journey resonated with you the most. Thank you for being a part of a community that believes in justice, honors sacrifice, and understands that the truest measure of a society is how it treats its most vulnerable citizens.